Welcome to the Transforming Trauma podcast. Transforming Trauma is presented by the Complex Trauma Training Center. I'm your host, Emily Ruth, and I'm so glad you've joined us today. Are you a mental health professional looking to deepen your clinical expertise in healing complex trauma? We're thrilled to announce our 2025 NARM Therapist Trainings designed to provide you with transformative training in the neuroaffective relational model. In 2025, we're offering 2 online cohorts for the Level 2 NARM Therapist Trainings. Our spring online cohort spans January to November 2025, and the summer online cohort runs May to December 2025. Through this advanced clinical training, you'll learn how to confidently and compassionately heal the impact of adverse childhood experiences, complex trauma, and CPTSD. You'll gain specialized trauma-informed training that supports the resolution of attachment, developmental, relational, cultural, and intergenerational trauma. Enrollment is open to licensed psychotherapists, counselors, social workers, and other licensed mental health professionals, as well as graduate trainees and interns working toward licensure. Join us and experience the integration of a neurobiologically informed clinical approach that promotes post-traumatic growth. Become part of a community where mindfulness meets clinical expertise and embody professional and personal growth as a catalyst for transformation in your practice and community. Visit complextraumatrainingcenter.com to register for the 2025 NARM Therapist Training that best fits your schedule. We hope you will join us to learn how NARM can transform your practice. And now for our episode. In today's conversation with Brad Kammer and Stefanie Klein, they share with our community openly about the progress with the Complex Trauma Training Center over the last year. I also appreciate the way they model their humanity and what they have learned during these developments. It is what I and so many others are drawn to in both the NARM model as well as in the culture of the Complex Trauma Training Center they have nurtured. And I think that really comes through in this episode. If you're interested in learning more about the upcoming space program they mention, you can go back and listen to episode number 142, posted back in September. It's a really rich conversation. But first, I'd like to introduce you to Brad and Stefanie. Stefanie Klein is the Assistant Training Director and Trainer in the Complex Trauma Training Center. She is a licensed clinical social worker, NARM Master Therapist, consultant, and trainer. She has spent over 25 years in her Los Angeles private practice, specializing in treating adults with trauma and anxiety disorders. Stefanie is excited to be part of the leadership of the Complex Trauma Training Center and looks forward to continuing to support therapists that are looking to have more ease and efficacy in their practice. Brad Kammer is the training director and senior trainer in the Complex Trauma Training Center. He is a licensed marriage and family therapist, somatic experiencing practitioner, and NARM master therapist. He has been in the trauma field for 25 years. Brad co-authored the Practical Guide for Healing Developmental Trauma, using the neuroaffective relational model to address adverse childhood experiences and resolve complex trauma, which presents one of the first comprehensive therapeutic models for addressing adverse childhood experiences and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Please enjoy my conversation with Stefanie Klein and Brad Kammer. All right, I'm sitting here with Brad Kammer and Stefanie Klein. Welcome both of you to Transforming Trauma.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Emily.
Hi. Well, I'm excited for this episode. We get to do this every year and just kind of check in and hear what's been going on with the center and everything. So first, I'd love to ask you both what you're wanting our listeners to get out of our time together today.
Well, let's see. I think we're just looking to kind of connect and celebrate the year we just had, our first year of being the Complex Trauma Training Center. We opened our virtual doors in February, and so it's almost been a full year. And we just feel really excited about what we've accomplished and what's ahead for CTTC.
Yeah.
I'm sure listeners will be excited to hear about that. And Brad?
Just piggybacking off of what Stefanie said, hundreds of therapists that have been trained with us this year. But even more than that is just this community that we're building that we're really excited about, which is really the heart of CTTC mission, which is to provide an ongoing professional community where we can continue to come back, whether that's very intensive trainings or whether it's just popping back in once or twice a year into our mentorship groups, our consult groups, and getting the professional support for ourselves within a field that can feel really lonely. Yeah. So training, consultation, mentorship, this is really what we're getting really excited about continuing to grow around.
Well, thanks, Brad. I appreciate you just kind of rounding that up of what we're looking at in our conversation today. So we're celebrating the first year of CTTC. It officially started in February, and you both dove right into some trainings. Well, what do you want to talk about first?
Yeah, so we had 3 NARM therapist trainings this year. We literally started our first one on February 1st, which was exciting. So we did 2 online NARM therapist trainings and then 1 in Austin this year, which was so nice. It's always so nice to be back in person. And I think this is either our 4th or 5th training in Austin. So we're building up a really nice community. We'll be back in a couple of years, hopefully. And then we had our 2nd year of master's therapist training that I've taught. Larry taught it for years, and I started teaching in the United States last year, 2023, and this was my 2nd year. And a lot of ways, this year was much better for me. The first time teaching something is exciting, but it's also not, the pieces aren't all together. So I felt so much more solid in the curriculum. And, I think all of our training team just felt more oriented about what this program is. And it was just a super amazing training this year. I continue to be so impressed, and we can hear from Stefanie because she did it online. So impressed by the hybrid synchronization that happens. We have people in person, we have people online, and for the most part, it just feels like one big group that's together. And I think that's hard to create, especially in this kind of work. And the material is just really powerful and transformative. So I continue to call it the highlight of my professional career, creating this training, teaching this training now twice. And I can't wait till March when my 3rd master's therapist training starts next year.
One of the amazing things is that this hybrid model works so well, and it provides really great accessibility for people from all over the world, from all over the country, to make decisions about what works best for them to be able to participate. And it really does feel like a cohort. And this year, the 2nd year running, we really got the tech down even more smoothly. And I just was blown away. I mean, being online, I just felt like I was in the training. And the year before, I had been in person and also experienced, it from the other side. And it's such a rich, deep, connecting training. And, for those who can make it in person, there's such beautiful opportunities for community building in that in-person way that we aren't really doing as much these days in all sorts of different communities. So pretty much the highlight of my year as well.
I love that. And I, as a participant, I really appreciate that flexibility that you mentioned. I wasn't able to be in person for all 3 modules, but I felt really connected to everyone, online. And then transitioning into in person, I just felt like, wait, I feel like we've already met in person, but it's just been in front of a screen. So that was really cool to experience that. So yeah, I appreciate the flexibility of that, and really appreciate all the work everyone put in to making that so smooth, all the technology. It was really impressive how well everything went. So
yeah, and we're pretty kind of, chill community. And so at night, we would hang out by the fire outside at the hotel we were doing the training at. And it was just so nice to have people from, all around. And we had a few folks from Europe that were with us in the training, and we had music and we had laughter. And that's also special too, because we've gotten to know each other since COVID, a lot of us online, and a lot of us haven't met in person. It's kind of the awkward icebreaker is like, wow, you're taller in person or, or shorter or whatever. So yeah, that's really fun. And then just, having time to go on walks or, just sit outside on the breaks. And, we're a community that tries to equalize us. So even though we're the teaching team and we have a lot of extra duties that we're doing throughout the day, it's very important that we're part of this community. And so having that time to connect with all the participants, some of these participants end up becoming part of our training team moving forward. It's just, for me, it's wonderful because online, that's limited. Yeah. There's not a lot of opportunity to have one-on-one contact with all the participants. And there's amazing people in this community. And having this opportunity to get to know folks more in person, more in depth, and sometimes just in very playful, kind of easy ways, I miss that online. So that's been really great to have that. And I love the accessibility that people that have difficulties making it in person for whatever reason, that they can still attend. And I think we do a pretty good job of making it feel seamless for them too. So
Yeah.
I love that you brought up you're taller, you're shorter. Like, I feel like I know people. It doesn't really occur to me that I've never met them in person until I see them in person. And there's all sorts of things you don't know or feel when your whole relationship with somebody is from like the shoulders up. It's really wild. And yeah, like Brad said, sometimes awkward and funny.
Yeah.
Emily, I was just thinking about something because we've dove in to talk about the trainings, which is fun. I'm loving this, but I was also thinking about like people that maybe aren't part of our trainings. And I kind of wanted to back up for a second for folks that are like, what are they talking about? Is this how this next 30 minutes is going to go?
Yeah.
And part of the intention that we do this every year is that we really value transparency in this organization. And Stefanie and I'm the training director. Stefanie is the assistant training director. We're also 2 out of the 3 faculty members of this organization. And we just want opportunities to kind of be really real and genuine and kind of pull the curtain back and let people know our process and our vantage point, get to know us a little bit more as humans and with all of our celebrations of things we feel proud about and excited about, but also the challenges that we go through running an organization like this. So I just wanted to kind of set the intention that we're here not just to kind of like, celebrate all of the accomplishments we've had, which we are going to do, but it's also just about sharing with you our process and being as honest as we possibly can so that people, who are interested in connecting with us get to know more about us and our organization. And also, we're just trying to model a certain kind of way of communicating that hopefully supports connection and intimacy.
Thank you for bringing that in. That feels really, like you're saying, a really important part of how you're moving forward in this work and letting folks kind of in on that culture of transparency.
Yeah, and I've been part of many different organizations over the years, and there's a spectrum between how transparent to not transparent these organizations are. And I know just for myself, I really value people that are able to really trust us to be adults and trust us to, like, even when there's challenging things going on, to let us have the information and we can do whatever we want with it. Of course, there's things that are too sensitive to be shared, but for the most part, that's a very core value of being honest and trusting that, we're all in this together. We all have our different kind of, again, challenges and strengths, and it feels good to share that because, it can be lonely at the top too. And so Stefanie and I and Marcia, who are faculty, we've been longtime professionals. So I think we're all highly professional, and yet we also want to embody our full humanity too within our roles.
Well, it feels like a really nice segue to talking about support, because such a big piece of what we built CTTC around is really this value and passion for mentorship. And I feel you starting to talk about receiving and giving support and the bi-directional value of that really is the essence of what CTTC is all about to us. It's really what we wanted to have as our intention moving forward, is a mentorship organization. And part of that is being open, being transparent, talking about hard things, trusting support, trusting that we can work through things, trusting that we're just all human beings, all works in progress, all working with challenges. And that's, professionally and also how the professional and personal at times come together. So yeah, I just think it's a nice segue, Brad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even this issue of support is challenging. Like, people come into our professional trainings and it is hard to be an adult, whether you're 30, 50, 80. It's hard to be an adult and learn new things, particularly when you've been more seasoned in your profession as a clinician. So already there's difficulty with that. And then, of course, most of us have had some level of educational trauma growing up. And then not to mention that, the material that we're presenting is depth oriented, which means you can't just go learn it out of a workbook or a worksheet, that it really takes time and is really an inside out learning process, because we have to be with the material so that we can learn how to really effectively bring it into our work with our clients. And so what that leaves us with is kind of this ambivalence around support, where a lot of people know they want it on some level, know they need it on some level, and yet are having difficulty asking for it and receiving it. And those are actually 2 different components of a challenge that a lot of people have. first is just asking for support, and second is receiving it. So being mentors, we're kind of studying this in our community, and everyone has different capacities around this, but we want to really try to work with each person and where they're at to the best of our ability. And some people are really good at asking for support, but might have trouble receiving it, and vice versa. So it's part of like what Stefanie and I talk a lot about, is about this mentorship process. And how do we, one size doesn't fit all. So how do we really use the NARM model that we're training our community in to also inform the way that we're assessing where our therapists are and how to meet them in best support of their development?
Yeah, I really appreciate you naming this. And Brad, if I can just speak to my own experience a little bit, I've mentioned to you recently how supportive that is for me as I'm kind of orienting into this culture of being transparent and learning to ask for support and all of that. Like, that's been definitely a part of my learning and something I've really appreciated in my own experience with the center and with each of you. So yeah, really helpful to bring that in.
Well, thank you for sharing, Emily.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about also like just being open and talking about this whole area of what comes up for us around support. We've had really beautiful kind of openings and discoverings with people around this area. Like when a TA is struggling with something and it didn't even occur to them to ask for support, even though there's, 2 floaters and a faculty member and a trainer that can come in and support them. And I mean, I just think it can't be overemphasized how tricky most people's relationship with receiving support, asking for support, and trusting support really is. And I agree with Brad that the style of mentorship that we've created over time, from meeting with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of therapists for all of these hours, supporting them, is very aligned with the NARM model, and also really starts with focusing on the therapist's internal experience. Starts with really looking at where they're at rather than focusing on the client and what's going on with them. Because in order for us to be able to really benefit from mentorship, we have to know where we're at in the present moment and how we're relating to even being there, talking about our challenges.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough also just about how much conflict there is around this internally for people, because people desperately want to grow, to evolve, to get better at their profession, to be a better support to their clients. There's such desire for that. And it's exciting to be part of a professional community where that is just the baseline. And even with that, there is a lot of strategy involved with not being open to the support that's available to people. And that's some of our job. That's the hard part. One of the hard parts of our job is to navigate the different strategies, because our relationship, kind of our contract, so to speak, with our participants are to be in this role where we're there to be a mentor, to be a teacher, to be a consult provider for them, to help them develop and grow in the ways that they really truly want to grow. And yet, again, people have these different strategies because of what has been associated with being open to learning, or not being where they think they should be, or not knowing something they think they should know, and how much that is difficult for people to stay present with. And I love that part of it, but it also can be challenging at times, because it can create challenging energy where we're just there to kind of support them and guide them. We're 100% invested in them becoming better at their roles and better support for their life. And we know that they want it, and yet it can be difficult to see it land for people. And that can be difficult.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking part of the alignment piece is, one of the things, Brad, that you often say when you're teaching the NARM therapist training or the master's training is we can't take our clients to places that we don't know for ourselves. And I feel that in terms of my role as a mentor, I think it's so important for me to be in touch with my own inner conflicts around whether it's accountability, support, being seen as not having it all together, whatever that is. And I'm just remembering, Brad has mentored me as a faculty member. And I'm just remembering a time when I really struggled with a challenging issue in a very public way in front of the class. And, Brad, I immediately turned to him. I immediately asked for help. That part was easy for me. But then he said, well, let's watch it together. let's watch the recording together and we can really slow it down and we can look at it. And like every fiber of my being was screaming, no, it felt like, I don't want you to see it. I don't want to see it. And, I just had to show up for that challenge with him. And it was so supportive and so helpful. I learned more out of that experience than anything else, probably as a teacher. And it was so internally challenging. And I really use that experience a lot to understand and know how it feels for therapists who are coming to me and showing me a recording or telling me what they said or what they did. So I just think it's really important that we are in touch with our own inner conflicts. We're not outside of that.
Yeah. Brad?
Yeah, I would say this happens to me all the time because the good news is that everything I do is video recorded. So I can go back and kind of have a reality test because we distort things so frequently. And so I will come away from the end of a day where I just didn't feel like I was doing well that day, or maybe I had a reaction. And I am convinced that I had this horrible reaction and that, I lost the class or I was mean to the student or whatever. And I'll go back and watch the video and like 9 times out of 10, I'm completely distorted. I look very patient and calm and curious, but my internal reaction is perhaps different. And it's just interesting to think about like how much we distort reality. I think the truth is that both are happening at the same time in that moment. Like I am having a reaction, but I'm also curious and patient. And it's just that because my inner world is so loud in that moment, I lose sight of what's happening on the outside. We talk about this very basic concept in our trainings called the 50-50. And it's really about how do we stay connected to ourselves while we're available for connection with other people. And the 50-50 idea means that, we're doing the best we can to stay balanced. Because if you're 90-10, if you're like 90% with someone else, that means you're only 10% with yourself, which is what therapists are perfect at. They're great at leaving themselves to be with other people, but there's costs to leaving yourself. Mm-hmm. And then therapists aren't usually like this, but other professions might be 10-90, where they're completely self-absorbed and have very much difficulty being with other people. There's a lot of costs involved with that as well. And so we're talking about kind of this 50-50. And I think that part of the mentorship that we're doing that Stefanie said, it's like if your baseline is, let's just say 90-10 with all your clients, no matter what intervention or model that we teach you, it doesn't matter. Until you're more imbalanced, everything is going to be used from this place that you're out of balance. And that's a lot of where people are coming into our trainings from. They're coming into our trainings demanding new skills that are going to help them be more effective because they're very invested in their client's experience, not realizing how out of balance they've become. Yeah. And we know that being a mental health professional is one of the top, I think, 5 or 10 burnout professions. So you can't exist for 5 or 10 or 15 years if you're constantly leaving yourself 6 or 7 or 8 hours a day in your work. So again, we're hoping that we can be a resource to help people find greater balance so they find greater aliveness and vitality in their profession, which is where we came into this profession. We were all super excited about learning more about humans and helping other people. Like there's so much vitality that brought most of us into this profession. And then 5, 10, 15 years later, most therapists struggle to stay connected to that.
Mm-hmm. That's so powerful. I really appreciate what you shared, Stefanie, and you as well, Brad. What kept coming up for me is thinking of you're modeling building capacity. Stefanie, when you shared that story, it's like you're modeling being with that moment, watching it again. And Brad, you're naming like sometimes we really distort actually what's happening in that moment. And so building capacity for this 50-50 and really being in the moment. What a challenge. And I so appreciate you both modeling that. I think that that's a huge part of this mentorship piece for me. All three of you both and Marcia, you're really modeling this building capacity in real time and allowing us as training assistants and others in the community to be with that too.
I'm just thinking about like sort of why I fell in love with NARM in the first place was that it combined the approach allowed me to be more effective, sure, But really why I fell in love with it is because it supported me to be more effective from a place of more ease inside of myself. And that's really what inspired me to kind of turn my whole career in this direction. And I'm thinking about the way that we mentor and support and the transformation or reorganization that often happens in the course of a case consult that I'm doing with somebody is really primarily about their relationship to themselves in the context of the challenge. So often I'm providing some support around, this model and some technical information, but the majority of the time people leave feeling more ease because they're relating to themselves differently, because they're back in their 50-50 or they've challenged a distortion, as Brad was talking about. And that feels very much why I'm so passionate about mentorship, or the way we approach mentorship, the ease that it brings people. It is a very, very hard job. And like Brad said earlier, it can be a very lonely job. And I very much believe that the Complex Trauma Training Center, the community that we're creating, and the approach to mentorship really goes a long way in supporting a feeling of we're all in this together, and the possibility that even really challenging work can come from a different place inside of us that we feel more ease.
Beautiful. So you both have mentioned we have the NARM therapist training, there's the master therapist training. You've talked about this mentoring and mentorship happening in the community that you're building. Is there anything else you want to say about the past year? Do you want to shift and talk about what's coming up next year? Where would you like to take this?
Well, part of this year has been our getting to meet up together and be creative to bring new programs and new ideas into Complex Trauma Training Center. And so, we have some exciting things coming up in 2025, and we're actively building them out as we speak, and really looking forward to the first. I'll just name them, and then Brad, you can talk about them. We're bringing a new program, the SPACE program, which is a inner development program for therapists. And it's open to all therapists, not just NARM therapists. And we're also bringing retreat, an in-person community retreat in 2025. So we're really excited about both of those things, but I'm going to turn them over to Brad to say more.
Yeah, the SPACE program's coming out of exactly what we've been talking about. It's about this deepening into the inner development work of therapists. And we're leaving behind kind of the clinical focus in a way, meaning that we're not going to be teaching kind of quote hard skills. We're not going to be teaching interventions. We're going to be teaching and supporting an awareness development for people who are in the role of therapists to get to know on 3 levels of experience how they can create more space for themselves. Like Stefanie said, more ease, or like I mentioned, more passion or aliveness. So the 3 levels are the personal level, which is our internal world. That is the starting point. Then how we bring that into our relationships, specifically our relationships with our clients, which is the interpersonal level, the relational level. And then something that is not so explicitly talked about, and yet almost every therapist is oriented to on some level, is this transpersonal or spiritual level. Sometimes people use the word sacred. I mean, this quality of transformative work you do when you're doing really depthful healing work, it takes on something larger than each individual person in that relationship. And, of course, there's been lots of spirituality built into psychology over the years. Carl Jung is obviously one of the most famous ones. But in our current kind of evidence-based world, there's not a lot of room for that. And so we're not going to do like a lot of teaching on that, but we are going to be creating space for reflection about how we can tap into all 3 of these levels, including the transpersonal level. And just the last thing I wanted to say about space is that it's a transparent process that, we came up with the name because of this. The word space is thrown around a lot in our trainings because it's like, as we are getting more into that 50-50 balance, there's more space that opens up for us where we're not so reactive with our clients or with ourselves. It becomes more space for us to be reflective. And so the Viktor Frankl quote is one that many therapists were introduced to about between stimulus and response, there's space, and in that space is our freedom. So there's been like a lot of these themes around space. And so that word just felt like it was the right word for us to design the program. And I have been racking my brain since then for like 6 months on an acronym, because every model has an acronym, and I want to be a cool kid here and be an acronym. And it came on a walk like a couple weeks ago, the acronym, which is almost like the perfect acronym, which is supporting presence, awareness, connection, and embodiment. So we got it. Yeah. And that's what this program is all about. Supporting presence, awareness, connection, which is the relational piece, and embodiment.
Amazing.
Yeah. And this is what we'll be focusing on. We're in the middle of designing it right now, and it's really exciting to put together. And we're all taking risks, the three of us, me, Stefanie, and Marcia, because some of this is material that we've never really presented. We don't quite know how to present it, and we're practicing on each other. And it's just been a really creative, fun process. And we feel a lot of support and goodwill and grace from our community. Yeah. So it's not going to be perfect. We're going to be learning along the way, particularly in the first year or two. Yeah, we're super excited to present it and start it in February next year.
I am so excited for this. And the acronym, like that feels like a download you had, Brad. It's so amazing.
I was just thinking about Brad was saying, like, we're taking a risk, it's like, it's definitely creating a new program and figuring out how to present something that isn't a training, but that's experiential. It's definitely, a growth edge. It's interesting to be in this spot. All of us have been around NARM for a very long time, and, that feels kind of comfy. And this is definitely new territory and exciting territory. Yeah, I can't wait and really appreciate everybody who is excited to come on the journey with us.
Yeah, I feel myself, I'm like buzzing inside. I just cannot wait. I'm so excited. And also, again, I just really appreciate both of you modeling this, like pushing your edges, taking some risks, teaching some things in a new way that you haven't quite taught, and being really transparent about that this is unfolding somewhat as you go.
Yeah, and it's really relational, like, because the inspiration for space really came out of hearing over and over and over again from people in the community, where they wanted more, what they wanted more of, and noticing what felt the most transformative, supportive. Like, we're really creating a program that speaks to what we're hearing, and what we're attuning to is the desire of therapists out there who are working with complex trauma. So that's exciting too. And it kind of also relates to part of our mission at Complex Trauma Training Center, the desire that people have to be a meaningful part of a community that feels like a fit for them. And so that also was what we were hearing that led us to want to create this great retreat that we have coming up in September. The desire for people to have lots of different ways to engage with and feel connected in a meaningful way to a community of professionals. Again, so that we don't feel so alone in all of this. So Brad and his committee are designing this amazing retreat in September, and Marcia and I are going to help lead it, and all sorts of people from the community are going to come in and offer workshops and things that they do. And there's going to be a lot of chance for fun and engagement and experiential learning and just togetherness.
Yeah, it's going to be so cool. And I want to segue into that. But before we do, if I can just put a little plug for anyone who's interested in learning more about space, we do have a previous episode they can listen to with Marcia joining us as well, and really going into what you just named, but a little more in depth if anyone is interested in space. And also, the space program is open to therapists, even if they haven't been NARM trained, correct? I just want to clarify that. So
correct.
And anyone who's listening, if you're a clinician, a therapist, a mental health provider, that's a pretty cool way to kind of intro into the community and understand really some foundational pieces around what NARM provides. And I just think that that's such a great opportunity, whether they're trained in some other modality, that space would be really supportive of wherever they are and however they're practicing. So I just wanted to name that, give a little plug. But Stefanie, you brought in the retreat. Do we want to kind of transition into talking about that a little bit, Brad? Do you want to share anything there?
Yeah, I'm just very excited about too. We've been talking about this for years. There's been a lot of interest in doing this. And like I said, the in-person programs and trainings we do, people just really find value of being together and getting to know each other. So the theme of this is about nourishment. We have worked really hard, particularly during COVID and coming out of COVID. I mean, therapists have just worked super hard. You know, the good news of psychology and therapy is that it's destigmatized for the most part in the United States. Like everyone on TikTok or, social media, it's not like it used to be 10, 20, definitely 30, 40 years ago. But what that means is that there's a huge demand for therapists. And so therapists are working really hard. And people are struggling in the world right now and needing a lot of support. And so again, there's costs to this profession. There's a lot of work, a lot of energy output that's happening. And it's hard to find that balance in our personal lives to kind of keep us in balance, particularly when we have families and, we have all these constraints that we're also having to manage. So this 4-day retreat is really about having time as a community to nourish each other on all levels. So there's going to be a lot of really great, like theoretical and cognitive nourishment about the morning workshops are going to be just really interesting about different people's passions and how they're working in different ways. And then in the afternoon, they're going to be much more experiential based, where we're going to, for example, do some art therapy practices or movement practices, how people bring movement into healing and psychotherapy. Every morning, we're going to have some, yoga and meditation and some nature walks. And then, as Stefanie said, in the evenings, there'll be some community celebration events, music, and we'll probably do some skits and stuff. And just an opportunity for us to be nourished in this beautiful natural environment in Northern California. We're going to have food made for us at the retreat center, so we're not going to have to worry about cooking. And the best part of it, I mean, the schedule hasn't been released yet, but it's going to be an amazing schedule once it comes out. But the best part of it is just being together and having all these different connections in an environment where we can just be ourselves and connect deeper with one another.
Beautiful. I mean, I think for anyone who's done any of their trainings online, this is a great way to get that in-person feel that you're naming, that both of you have named, is so important and special. So yeah, that'll be so great. And that's for anyone NARM trained, or can you talk a little bit more about who that retreat is for?
Yeah, it's anyone that's been through any of the NARM trainings anywhere around the world. It doesn't have to be United States. So we have a big NARM community in Europe and other parts of the world. So yeah, there are going to be limited spots, but yes, it's for people that have at some level been through NARM trainings, from the NARM basics training to the NARM therapist, NARM master therapist, post-master therapist with Larry. So we'll be open to that. And I just had this funny, as I was telling that story about the retreat, I had this image of, like, it's been a while now, but I used to go to a lot of conferences earlier in my career, and they tended to be pretty stuffy. Stefanie and I went to one together. They tend to be in these kind of stuffy hotels, and, there's some really good information and some interesting stuff, but usually these conferences have one night where they have like a dance party or something. And I always found those so funny because people have been so stuffy for 4 or 5 days and they let loose. And we're going to be a little bit the opposite. We're going to just be letting loose while we're also learning. So that's part of that ease that Stefanie talked about. We're just going to be ourselves, and, we're going to be relaxed but also be engaging in some really awesome material. I'm really excited about my particular workshop. I know Stefie's going to do a really interesting one too. Anyways, all that will be coming out shortly, but we're looking forward to that community connection.
Yeah. You're naming something important, I think, too, from a learning standpoint. Like, I find that I myself as a learner, I learn better when I feel more relaxed and when I'm not in that sort of stuffy environment. So you're naming something, that I think is so important. Like, this is just the culture of how we do as NARM. And the being aspect, like, we can all just be who we are and kind of let down some, at least for myself, I'll just name, I feel like I'm able to let down some of those defenses and really soak in the material. And I think that's one thing about the NARM trainings and this retreat too, that will be really special for all of us that are able to attend, that we can learn kind of maybe in a deeper way because we're able to just show up as who we are. So thanks for naming that, Brad. And Stefanie, you kind of chimed in. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I was just thinking about how impossible it really is to learn, really learn, deeply learn, and take something in and integrate it from a place of feeling, tension and pressure or, like you have to perform. And it just made me think about laughing and crying because they're both ways that I take things in. I mean, like laughing is super important to me. Humor is super important to me and bringing it into the mix. When I think about the retreat, I just expect to be laughing a lot, but also like feeling moved or, crying for some reason, when something's landing for me and my emotions are coming up and I feel the pain of something, the anger of something, the grief of something, those are also moments where I'm really integrating something in a deep way. I don't know if I'm going to cry at the retreat, but I'm sure I'm going to laugh.
I love that.
I just had an association. This is a personal story.
Yeah.
I had this transformative experience in my mid-20s where I was on a Native American reservation up in northern British Columbia, and they invited me and my partner to come, and they were doing a ceremony. And it was like a 24-hour ceremony. So they invited us to kind of be there. We weren't full participants in the ceremony, but we were there with them. And the part that they allowed us to be part of the ceremony was at the end where they did a sweat lodge. And, growing up in the United States, like religion just feels so stuffy to me. If everything feels very tight and there's like right ways to do it, there's wrong ways to do it. You'll get in trouble if you don't do it the right way. And these guys, I mean, we were in the sweat lodge. They were singing their songs that they had been passed down for thousands of years, probably, and they were farting, and they were making the most crude jokes. And in between rounds of the sweat lodge, they'd get out and they were smoking cigarettes. It was like it shattered this wall between what it is to be human and what it is to be spiritual. And ever since then, I have really made that a big value for myself, that I want that wall to be less strong for me. And so as a teacher that's holding these really intense trainings, Stefanie knows this. I don't do this in front of the class usually, but I like to laugh. We like to have fun behind the scenes because it's all part of the same thing. It's all part of being human. There is grief, there's overwhelm, and there's also just amazing moments of laughter and connection and play. And so again, as we talk about the retreat, or as we talk about moving forward with CTTC in the future, maybe we can be a little bit of a beacon of light for our profession, that we're really going to be trying to embody our humanity as much as we can in a world that really needs that.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
I have a joke that I'm holding back.
You gotta share.
I just want to reassure everybody that there's not going to be a farting workshop at the retreat.
Oh my gosh. Oh no, I really appreciate what I know I was drawn to in the NERM community is, like you said, Brad, just bringing in our humanity, that we can show up and be a little bit raw, and that's not only okay, it's like it's embraced. It's really embraced in our community. So thanks. Anything else? So we've talked about space, we've talked about the retreat. Anything else you want to name for the coming year?
Well, just that we have 2 NARM therapist trainings that will be happening online. One will be in January starting. One will be in May, I believe, starting. We have the master's level training for those who have completed the NARM therapist training. And then we have the space program. So, we're going to be busy with those trainings, and we're not going to be doing an in-person NARM therapist training next year in 2025, but in 2026, we will be doing it in Salt Lake City, Utah. So really excited to bring it to Utah, NARM training to Utah for the first time ever. Although Emily and I got to spend some time this summer in Utah doing a workshop on NARM, but we'll be doing our first training to train therapists. And hopefully people will come. Utah's a beautiful place to visit. So hopefully we'll have some out of town folks as well. So we'll give more information as that gets closer, but we got a big year planned.
Awesome.
And of course, we're looking forward to another great year with the Transforming Trauma podcast. And with you, Emily, with our amazing host. This continues to be such an amazing place to get to share and support each other and learn from each other. Just really appreciate what you contribute.
Definitely.
Thank you so much, Stefanie. It's such a gift. And I'm excited for all the guests we have coming up. Some of them we've already recorded this year that will be online next year. And I'm really excited about what we have coming up. So thanks for naming that, Stefanie.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm mindful of the time, so I want to just thank both of you and for taking the time to be with our community and share all that we have coming up and get us all excited for the space program, for the retreat, for upcoming therapist trainings, and just appreciate you both. And again, the way that you're modeling this transparency and sharing with the community who you are, and the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode. To find more information about our guest, check the show notes or visit us at complextraumatrainingcenter.com/transforming trauma. You can also connect with us in other ways. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. As a mental health professional, your commitment to healing and growth inspires us. We at the Complex Trauma Training Center are committed to supporting you in your well-being and success. That's why we're honored to invite you to our Space Program 2025, an interdevelopment program of support and self-discovery for therapists on the personal, interpersonal, and transpersonal levels. Running over 6 online sessions in 2025, this interactive experiential learning program is designed to support self-care and self-discovery for therapists, exploring internally, relationally, and transpersonally. CTTC faculty will welcome you into a professional community of therapists that are seeking to create greater effectiveness and resilience in our professional lives. As CTTC faculty Brad Kammer says, the intent is that this program will help us not only become more effective therapists, but also love our work more. Please visit complextraumatrainingcenter.com and secure your spot in the 2025 Space Program. Thanks to Andrea Klunder and the Creative Imposter Studios for producing and editing, to Elisa Sponseller for our album art, and to Brad Kammer for the creation of this podcast. We look forward to building community and connection with you and changing the world by transforming trauma.